I sold my antique business for $45 million. After 40 years of work, every early morning and late night, every weekend spent at estate sales, every item I carefully restored with my own hands, it had all finally paid off. The buyers, a luxury retail conglomerate from New York, had been courting me for 2 years, but I'd held firm. This was my baby. I'd started it in 1984 with just $2,000 and a dream, working out of a small storefront in Charleston, South Carolina, while my husband Robert finished his accounting degree. But now, at 62, my back hurt from lifting furniture, my eyes strained from examining hallmarks and signatures, and I was ready to rest, ready to travel, ready to finally enjoy the life Robert and I had been putting off for decades. The lawyer called me at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. "Mrs. Miller, the wire transfer has cleared. $45 million is now in your account." My hands trembled as I hung up. $45 million. I sat in my small office at the back of the shop, surrounded by Victorian chairs and depression glass, and I cried. Not sad tears, happy ones. Robert and I could finally do everything we'd dreamed about. The villa in Tuscany we'd talked about renting for a month. The cruise through the Greek islands. Paying off our daughter Christina's medical school loans. Setting up trust funds for our 3 grandchildren. I had to tell Robert. Right now, I couldn't wait until he got home from work at 6. This was too big, too wonderful. We'd built this life together, and he deserved to share this moment. I grabbed my purse, the one Robert had given me for our 35th anniversary, real leather, with my initials embossed in gold. Inside, I tucked the folder with all the sale documents. I wanted him to see everything, to hold the papers in his hands and know it was real. The drive to his office took 23 minutes. Robert worked at Henderson & Associates, a mid-sized accounting firm downtown where he'd been a partner for the past 18 years. I'd only been to his office a handful of times over the years. He liked to keep work and home separate, he always said. I respected that. I parked in the visitor lot and practically ran through the glass doors. The receptionist, a young woman named Ashley who I'd met at the company Christmas party, looked up with surprise. "Mrs. Miller! What a lovely surprise! Are you here to see Mr. Miller?" "Yes, is he available? I have wonderful news." She glanced at her computer screen, and something flickered across her face. Hesitation? "He's in his office. Let me just buzz him." "Oh, don't bother, I'll surprise him," I said, already heading toward the hallway. I knew his office was on the 2nd floor, corner window overlooking the old courthouse. "Mrs. Miller, wait, But I was already at the elevator, my heart pounding with excitement. $45 million. Our whole world was about to change. The elevator dinged. 2nd floor. I turned left, counting the doors like I remembered. 3rd door on the right, brass nameplate reading, Robert Miller, CPA. I reached for the handle, smiling so wide my cheeks hurt. And then I heard it. Laughter. A woman's laughter, light and intimate, coming from inside Robert's office. My hand froze on the doorknob. "Robert, you're terrible," the woman's voice said, playful, affectionate. "Am I?" My husband's voice, lower than usual, almost a purr. "You didn't seem to think so an hour ago." An hour ago. I looked at my watch. 10:15 a.m. My mind went blank. White noise filled my ears. The documents in my purse suddenly felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. I should have knocked. I should have walked away. I should have done 100 different things. Instead, I opened the door. Robert stood by the window, his tie loosened, his shirt sleeves rolled up. Next to him, close enough that their shoulders touched, stood Melissa Crane. I knew her. Of course I knew her. She was the firm's marketing director, 42 years old, divorced, blonde hair always perfectly styled. She'd been at every company event for the past 5 years. I'd made small talk with her about her son's baseball team. I'd complimented her shoes. They both turned. The color drained from Robert's face. "Dorothy," he stammered. "What are you? I didn't know you were coming." Melissa took a small step back, but not far enough. Not nearly far enough. "I wanted to surprise you," I heard myself say. My voice sounded strange, distant. "I have news." Robert's eyes darted to Melissa, then back to me. We were just reviewing the quarterly projections. I looked at the conference table. No papers. No laptop open. Just 2 coffee cups, sitting side by side. The quarterly projections, I repeated slowly. Dorothy, let me explain. Explain what, exactly? The folder in my purse felt like it was burning through the leather. $45 million. The sum echoed in my head, suddenly taking on a different meaning. I should go, Melissa said quickly, grabbing her phone from Robert's desk. As she passed me, she wouldn't meet my eyes. Excuse me, Mrs. Miller. The door clicked shut behind her. Robert and I stood there, 10 feet apart, 37 years of marriage hanging in the air between us. How long? I asked. Dorothy, please. How long, Robert? He sank into his desk chair, suddenly looking every one of his 64 years. 3 years. 3 years, I calculated backward. Our daughter's wedding, the birth of our youngest grandchild, my mother's funeral where Robert had held my hand through the entire service. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I never meant for you to find out like this. Never meant for me to find out at all, he meant. I should have screamed. I should have thrown something. I should have demanded answers, explanations, reasons. Instead, I said, I sold the business. Robert looked up, confused. What? The antique shop. I accepted the offer. The money cleared this morning, that's why I came to tell you. I thought we could celebrate. I watched his face carefully. Watched the surprise turn to something else, something calculating. How much? He asked. And there it was. Not, are you okay? Not, what do you need? Just, how much? The full asking price, I said. $45 million. His eyes widened. For a moment, he forgot about Melissa, forgot about his betrayal. All he saw were dollar signs. That's incredible, Dorothy. We should talk about this. About how to invest it, structure it for taxes. As your husband, I can help. As my husband, I interrupted. Yes. We should definitely talk about that. Something in my tone made him pause. Dorothy, what happened just now, with Melissa, it's complicated. But the business sale, that's something we built together. That money belongs to both of us. Both of us. After 40 years of me running that shop, me doing the buying and selling, me building the reputation and client base while he climbed the corporate ladder at his firm. You're right, I said carefully. We should talk about this, but not here, not now. I need some time to process everything. Relief flooded his face. Of course, take all the time you need. We'll figure this out, Dorothy, all of it. I nodded and turned to leave. Dorothy, he called after me. I looked back. I do love you. That never changed. I didn't answer. I just walked out, past the empty reception desk where Ashley had mysteriously disappeared, past the elevator, down the stairs because I couldn't bear to be enclosed in that small space, out to my car where I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. Then I drove to my lawyer's office. Bernard Chen had handled my business affairs for 15 years. He was 65, sharp as a tack, and had handled his own difficult divorce a decade ago. If anyone would understand, it would be Bernard. Dorothy, he said, surprised when his secretary showed me in. I wasn't expecting you. Is everything all right? Did you get the confirmation about the wire transfer? I got it, I said, closing the door behind me. Bernard, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Always. The antique business. It was mine before I married Robert. I started it with my own money, ran it entirely myself. Over the years, I paid myself a salary, but I never added Robert's name to the business documents. Legally, whose business was it? Bernard leaned back in his chair, studying me. In South Carolina, we're an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. But given that you started the business with separate funds before the marriage, maintained it entirely yourself, and never commingled it with marital assets. He paused. Dorothy, what's going on? Just answer the question, please. The business, and the proceeds from its sale, would likely be considered your separate property. Robert would have a difficult time claiming any portion of it in a divorce. Divorce. The word hung in the air. But, Bernard continued carefully, he could argue that his emotional support, or the fact that you were able to focus on the business because you weren't the primary breadwinner, gave him some claim. It would be messy. These things always are. What if there was a reason for the divorce? Bernard's eyes narrowed. What kind of reason? Adultery. 3 years' worth. He was quiet for a long moment. Do you have proof? I thought about what I'd seen. 2 people standing close, intimate laughter, Robert's admission. Not yet, but I could get it. Dorothy, I have to ask, is this really what you want? 37 years is a long time. What I wanted, I said slowly, was to come home and celebrate with my husband, to plan our retirement together, to finally enjoy the life we worked so hard to build. What I got was a man who's been cheating on me for 3 years, asking how much money I made so he could figure out how to invest it. Bernard nodded slowly. Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, we don't tell Robert anything about the legal status of the business sale. Not yet. Second, we need documentation of the affair. Photographs, texts, witnesses, anything concrete. Third, we need to move quickly before he has a chance to hide assets or make claims against the sale proceeds. How quickly? How quickly can you get me proof? I thought about Melissa's nervous exit, about Ashley the receptionist's strange expression, about 3 years of company parties and business dinners and weekend emergency meetings at the office. Give me 2 weeks, I said. I spent those 2 weeks becoming someone I never thought I'd be, a spy, an investigator, a woman on a mission. First, I called Ashley, the receptionist. I invited her to lunch at a quiet cafe downtown, just the 2 of us. She was nervous, stirring her iced tea repeatedly without drinking it. Ashley, I said gently, I know you know something, and I'm not angry with you, but I need the truth. She was quiet for a long time. Then, very softly, everyone at the office knows. Mrs. Miller. They've been involved for years. They go to lunch together every Thursday at the Harbor Inn. They take conference trips together. Last Christmas party, I saw them. I'm sorry. I thought you knew. I patted her hand. Thank you for being honest with me. Next, I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Webb, a retired police detective recommended by Bernard. I felt ridiculous at first, like I was in some made-for-TV movie. But Marcus was professional and kind. Mrs. Miller, I've been doing this for 20 years. You're not being paranoid, and you're not being vindictive. You're being smart. He gave me a small audio recorder to keep in my purse. If Robert says anything incriminating, record it. South Carolina is a one-party consent state. It's legal. Marcus followed Robert and Melissa for a week. The evidence was damning. Photographs of them entering a condo in Mount Pleasant, one Robert was apparently renting. Credit card receipts from romantic restaurants. Texts that Marcus obtained through means I didn't ask about. But it was the video that sealed it. Marcus caught them on camera, kissing in the parking lot of the Harbor Inn, Robert's hand on Melissa's face in a gesture so tender it made my stomach turn. Because I remembered when he used to touch me like that. While Marcus gathered evidence, I made other preparations. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, one where Robert had no access. Bernard helped me transfer the $45 million into it, minus the taxes we'd need to pay. The rest went into a secure trust. I also started documenting everything in our joint accounts. Robert had always handled our finances, but I had access to the statements. I discovered things I'd missed for years, large cash withdrawals, payments to furniture stores and jewelry shops that had never resulted in anything appearing in our home. A credit card I didn't know existed, with charges to hotels and restaurants across 3 states. The man I'd been married to for 37 years had been living a double life. On day 12, Robert came home early. I was in the kitchen, making dinner like I had thousands of times before. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, the meal plan we'd followed for years because of his cholesterol. "Dorothy, we need to talk," he said. My heart jumped, but I kept my voice steady. "About what?" "About the money, from the sale. I've been thinking, and I really should be involved in the investment decisions. It's a lot of money, and you've never had to manage that kind of sum before. I could set up a meeting with our financial advisor. Our financial advisor? Well, mine, technically, but he could help both of us. The thing is, Dorothy, we need to be strategic about this. Tax implications, estate planning, wealth management. It's complicated. I turned from the stove to face him. You want to control the money. Not control. Manage. There's a difference. Is there? He sighed, like I was being difficult. Dorothy, I know you're still upset about what you saw at my office. I've told you, Melissa and I, it's not serious. It's complicated, midlife crisis stuff. But that doesn't change the fact that we're married, and that money from your business, it's a marital asset. Actually, I said quietly, it's not. He blinked. What? The business was started before our marriage with my separate funds. I ran it independently for 40 years. Legally, the sale proceeds are my separate property. I watched his face change. Surprise, then calculation, then something harder. You've been talking to a lawyer. I have. Dorothy, you're making a mistake. You're listening to people who want to divide us. Whatever you think you saw. I didn't think I saw anything, Robert. I saw you with Melissa, and you admitted to a 3-year affair. That's not a misunderstanding. So what, you're going to divorce me? After 37 years? Over one mistake? One mistake that lasted 3 years, and I'm starting to realize it's probably not even the first. His jaw tightened. You can't do this. That money, I have rights to it. I supported you all these years. Supported me? I ran a business for 40 years, Robert. A successful business that I built from nothing. You supported yourself. You had your career, your life. I had mine. We're married, Dorothy. That means what's yours is mine. And there it was. The real Robert. Not the man who'd held my hand at my mother's funeral. Not the man who danced with me at our daughter's wedding. The man who saw me, and $45 million, as property to be claimed. I turned off the stove. The chicken could burn for all I cared. You're going to hear from my lawyer, I said. I'm filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. I have evidence. Photographs, videos, witness statements, financial records of you spending marital funds on your affair. You can contest it if you want, but it's going to get ugly, uglier than it needs to be. His face went red. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Where are you going to go? This is your home. Actually, I said, picking up my purse, this is our home, jointly owned marital property, which means I'm entitled to stay here just as much as you are, but I don't want to. I'm going to stay with Christina for a while. You're turning our daughter against me? I'm telling our daughter the truth. What she does with that information is up to her. I walked out of the kitchen, up the stairs to our bedroom, and packed a suitcase. Robert followed me, arguing, pleading, threatening by turns. I ignored him. As I loaded my suitcase into my car, he stood in the driveway. You're going to regret this, Dorothy. You think you can just take everything and leave me with nothing? I'll fight you. I'll fight you for every penny. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Maybe for the first time in years. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this way, and I'd just chosen not to see it? You do what you have to do, Robert. So will I. The divorce proceedings were every bit as ugly as Bernard had warned me they would be. Robert hired an aggressive attorney who tried every angle. They claimed the business had benefited from Robert's emotional support and financial stability. They argued that his accounting expertise had helped me structure deals and avoid tax pitfalls. They even tried to claim that he deserved compensation for sacrificing career opportunities to support my entrepreneurial endeavors, which was laughable considering he'd been a partner at his firm for 18 years. But I had Marcus's evidence. The photographs of Robert and Melissa entering and leaving the rented condo. The credit card statements showing thousands of dollars spent on jewelry I'd never received, dinners at romantic restaurants I'd never been to, hotel rooms in cities I'd never visited. The text messages that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. And I had something else. During my documentation of our finances, I discovered that Robert had taken out a second mortgage on our house without telling me. using the funds to invest in a failed real estate venture with one of Melissa's ex-husbands. He'd forged my signature on the documents. That turned out to be a federal crime. Bernard leveraged that information beautifully. Robert's lawyer got very quiet when we presented the evidence of forgery and fraud. "We didn't press criminal charges," Bernard explained in a meeting with all attorneys present, as long as Robert was reasonable about the divorce settlement. Reasonable, in this case, meant I kept the $45 million from the business sale. Robert got to keep his retirement accounts and his interest in the accounting firm, and we'd split the sale of the house 50-50 after paying off the fraudulent second mortgage. Robert would also need to buy out my half of his retirement, since he'd spent marital funds on the affair. Melissa, interestingly, broke up with Robert 2 months into the proceedings. Apparently, having an affair with a married partner was exciting. Being associated with a man in the middle of a contentious divorce involving fraud allegations was not. The divorce was finalized 9 months after that morning in Robert's office. I was 63 years old, single for the first time since I was 25, and wealthier than I'd ever imagined I could be. Christina, my daughter, was furious with her father. She'd suspected something was off for years, she told me, but had never wanted to believe it. She supported me completely, which meant Robert's relationship with his daughter and grandchildren became strained. That was his choice, not mine. With the divorce behind me, I had to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. $45 million is a lot of money, but it's also a lot of responsibility. I did hire a financial advisor, but not Robert's. I found my own. A woman named Patricia who specialized in helping newly divorced women manage sudden wealth. Together, we created a plan. $20 million went into conservative investments, bonds, index funds, real estate investment trusts. $10 million went into a foundation I established to help women entrepreneurs start their own businesses. I called it the Second Chances Foundation, and I worked with Christina, who had always been interested in business development, to run it. $5 million I kept liquid for living expenses and personal investments. And $10 million? $10 million I used to have some fun. I bought that villa in Tuscany. Not rented it, bought it. A small stone house with a garden overlooking the hills, where I spent 6 months learning to speak Italian and making wine with the locals. I took that cruise through the Greek islands, except I didn't take a cruise ship. I chartered a small yacht with a captain and crew, and I invited Christina and her family to join me. We spent 3 weeks swimming in impossibly blue water and eating fresh fish on tiny islands that didn't have names on any map. I paid off Christina's medical school loans, and I set up trust funds for my grandchildren, but not the kind that would make them lazy. The kind that would pay for their education, give them seed money for businesses or homes, but require them to work for anything beyond that. And I started dating. At 63, I wasn't looking for another husband. I'd had one of those, and look how that turned out. But I discovered I enjoyed male companionship without the legal entanglements. I went on dates with retired professors and artists and a very charming Italian man named Enzo who owned a bakery in Florence. None of them were serious. That wasn't the point. The point was that I was living my life on my terms for the first time in decades. 2 years after the divorce, I was back in Charleston for Christina's birthday. We were having dinner at a restaurant downtown, the kind of place I never would have gone to when I was married because Robert always said it was too expensive. The waiter had just brought our appetizers when I saw him. Robert, sitting at a table across the room with a woman I didn't recognize. She was younger than him, though not as young as Melissa. They were holding hands across the table. He saw me at the same moment. Our eyes met. He looked older, thinner. There was a tightness around his mouth that hadn't been there before. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, something. Instead, I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just a mild curiosity about the woman he was with, and then a stronger curiosity about the wine list. "Mom?" Christina touched my hand. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, and I meant it. "Let's get a bottle of the Barolo, the good one." We ordered the expensive wine, and the expensive entrees, and the ridiculously overpriced dessert that turned out to be worth every penny. We laughed and told stories, and Christina showed me pictures of the grandkids on her phone. I didn't look at Robert's table again. Later, as we were leaving, I had to walk past him to get to the exit. He stood up as I approached. "Dorothy," he said awkwardly. "You look well." "Thank you." "I heard about your foundation, the Second Chances thing. That's good, that you're doing something meaningful with the money." I almost laughed, still thinking about the money. "I'm doing a lot of things, Robert. The foundation is just one of them." "Right, of course." He gestured to the woman at his table. "This is Karen. Karen, this is Dorothy, my ex-wife." Karen looked uncomfortable. I felt a flash of sympathy for her. She had no idea what she was getting into. "Nice to meet you," I said politely. Then to Robert, "I hope you're well." I walked out before he could respond. Christina was waiting for me outside. "That was gracious of you," she said. "I would have thrown my drink at him." "I thought about it," I admitted, but the Barolo was too good to waste. We laughed all the way to the car. That night, lying in bed in my small apartment overlooking the harbor, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the divorce, the money, the new life I'd built. Some people might say I got lucky, that finding out about the affair right after the business sale was fortunate timing, that the money made everything easier. And they'd be right about the money. It absolutely made things easier. But luck? No. I'd worked for 40 years to build something of value. I'd made smart choices, even when they were hard. I'd trusted my instincts when something felt wrong. And when my world fell apart, I'd picked up the pieces and built something new. That wasn't luck. That was life. I fell asleep thinking about my next trip. Patricia, my financial advisor, had mentioned a photography tour through New Zealand. 6 weeks, small group, professional instruction. I'd always wanted to learn photography. At 63 years old, I had all the time in the world. I sold my antique business for $45